Faster! We needn't stay here too long, I yelled at the top of my lungs. I saw the dragons carrying as much of the meat as possible. Many of them were frantic and often dropped whatever they managed to pick up. I watched as one female got speared through the neck and another through his eye. I kept moving. They weren't prepared. I'd become used to losing members of this flight, so this didn't faze me. Nothing mattered enough that was worth holding on to in this world. I'm a solitary creature by nature, so while I formed bonds with other creatures, I understood every interaction, every moment was fleeting, was minimal in comparison to the grand scheme of things. This life that we live was just an experience. We owed it to ourselves alone to make use of it. It could help us in our next experience. Nobody liked hearing my rambles, but with all the magic available in this world, I knew that there was an unlimited supply of it outside of what this small world could hold. I shook my head and smelled something peculiar. Something made me walk towards their nest. As I stepped inside, dragon flames bathing my surroundings, I came face to face with a female human, not before finding her child. I'd never seen one up close. It looked helpless. It's hard to believe something so savage came from something so weak-looking. It looked eerily similar to the babies of my species. The mother looked panicked, but she didn't run. Why was she still here? She grabbed that silver weapon her kind used, but she didn't use it none. She probably didn't want to risk hurting her offspring. Right then, we shared a moment. I searched her eyes as she searched mine, and in that moment I realized that she was not vicious and violent like the others. That's it. The humans were not all like this. Maybe others like her were just products of their environment. The fire raged on behind my mind, and just like that, a massive and aggressive human came boisterously in, breaking our reverie. He sought to attack, and the nest started to crumble around us. I grabbed the mother and I flew away with her. I thought to myself, why are you doing this? What's the point? I could have dropped her when it was safe, but that whole area was a war zone where both dragons and humans alike were losing their lives. It felt wrong to leave her in that, so I kept flying, and in time, I just never went back. After a few days, we all rested. "Hey, Klaus, we're going on another raid," said a young male natter. "Go on ahead without me, boy," I replied, looking towards the summit of my personal tower. For a brief moment, I saw the young natter follow my gaze to then wear an expression of disdain. I whirled around on him and snarled viciously. It was no secret that the other dragons didn't like the fact that I had a human. Some of them were okay with it, but it's only because they thought that she was my plaything or prisoner. A few, like this young male, knew the truth. They knew that I was keeping her here for observation and possibly, for a more sinister purpose. She was my pet, and I would not be telling the truth if I said I didn't enjoy her company. I think the enjoyment of her company is the part that made the other dragons uneasy. For many weeks, she made a horrible shrieking noise. Sometimes it got so bad that it really started to make me worry. I tried getting close to her this particular day. She all but scratched me in the face and screamed out this nightmarish cry. Maybe she's in heat. That usually happens to dragons and other creatures when they lose their young, or when the young leaves the nest. On a tree growing out of the centerpiece of my tower, I etched in my findings. Like a blur, a pack of slitherwing flew past me as I fastened my claws deeper into the side of the tower stone. "Slithe!" I called out. A female slitherwing, the brightest of them all, flapped her wings in a mighty beat so she could slow immediately. "Have you been avoiding me?" I asked her, annoyed. "I have much to do, but I've not forgotten your inquiry." "Oh, really? Well, I do say the matter's getting worse." She landed beside me and held onto the side of the tower as well, struggling to find her footing at first. I smiled confidently. She looked around to make sure no one was listening or watching us. She leaned in closer to me. "I don't think I have to tell you, Klaus, that you've made the rest of the flight very disconcerted with the arrival of your human." "It doesn't concern me what they think." "If that's the case, it would be best that you set off on your own. Besides, we don't know why she makes those calls. For all you know, she could be signaling the rest of her kind to find her." "Is that what it is? Well, Please just come have a look. Everything you say is just speculation up until this point.
Klaus, even if I have a look at her, it's still going to be speculation, as I know very little about humans.
But you're a hyper-observant thing. Maybe you can find the correlation to her cries. The Slitherwing huffed and sighed. I knew very well that I was the last person she wanted to be dealing with. She gave me a long, cold, hard stare. I stared right back with my large, unblinking eyes.
Oh, fine. Where is the thing?
Right up this way.
Bring me to her.
In a few moments, we landed at the top of the tower. I was a good fighter, and the few dragons that challenged me always ended up regretting it. This was good, because it made it much easier to convince other potential challengers that making me irate would be the worst decision they ever made. That's why I could leave a human alone for long periods of time.
What does she eat?
She makes use of whatever I give her. She likes burnt fish. My guess is she's in heat. Sly turned to face me in an instant.
What makes you say that?
Back at the raid on that island, she had a young one.
What happened to it?
I'm guessing the larger, more aggressive human was a father. He came in, so I just left it there with him. I mean, it would have been more trouble if I brought it along with us.
You took her from her infant?
Yeah.
Klaus, you fool. She's not in heat. She's in mourning.
Why would she be?
Humankind are very attached to their offspring because they grow so slowly and outside the egg. There's more of an investment of time. The young need more care upon birth, so they become more bonded than most creatures.
But the offspring looked like it had just been born, so there wasn't that much time for it to bond with her, or for her to bond with it.
Yes, but because they take so much time to grow, they take a long time in gestation. So technically she's been bonded with it for almost a year.
Oh. Suddenly I felt very stupid. It never occurred to me that a human would mourn for her offspring, especially if it was still alive.
Won't she get over it? Eventually, but if you want her to stop making that hollering noise, then you're going to have to discipline her.
I think it cruel to do so.
Trust me, Klaus,
said Sly as she coiled her body around me. I had built up an immunity to her poison, but that didn't mean I still didn't get sick for days being in contact with it.
The only thing that would be cruel is to let her keep making that noise, which will inevitably drive the other dragons crazy. At that point, if the whole group decides to attack the human, there's little to nothing you'll be able to do about it. As I tell everyone, do heed my warning.
She unwrapped herself from around me and flew away. After many hours, the human finally quieted down and fell asleep. I watched over her. Something about her fascinated me. I crept up close to her and then wrapped my body around hers to keep her warm. Humans are weird. They have no scales, no feathers, nor fur to protect their skin. Instead of growing their own, they take it from resources around them or from prey, which seems very counterintuitive if you ask me. Her eyes slowly opened and I watched as they landed on mine. She woke in a start and stumbled away from me. I extended my wings and flapped them slowly in a gesture to say that I wasn't a threat. She looked at me with wonder. Okay, that's a start. I then decided to fly away, leaving her alone for hours. I thought it important to make her feel safe and to also give her her solitude. I figured she had the desire to be alone the way I do most times. Several days passed by, and several weeks then passed by, until eventually the human no longer shied from my presence. She grew to trust me. She even made the first move to curl up beside me in the cool of the night. I smiled at this. That's right, my little pet. How to train your human. I'm a natural. I usually enjoyed waking up earlier than the other dragons. I could be as active at night as I was in the daytime, even though I chose to be in a state of rest when the sun was at its highest. My internal clock was confused when it woke really early and noticed all the other dragons were awake too. What's going on? I asked one of the dragons flying overhead. She did not even slow as she answered, "He's back!" I knew exactly who she was talking about. Our leader, our guardian, and my friend. The one to whom I was the great advisor. The bewildered beast. I looked back at my human and she gave me the inkling that she was content. I guess she was getting used to me since she didn't have much of a choice. Well, that's smart on her behalf because whether she knew it or not, I was her only mode of protection. All of my wings stiffened in excitement upon Rove's arrival. He always had great stories to tell, and oh, did I have one to tell him too. I flew down to meet him as he swam into the cove. Well, it's about time you show up. Klaus, how are you? Boy, am I tired. I know you didn't come back here with an empty mouth, did you? Of course not. He bellowed deeply, and all the other dragons came rushing in to get their meals. Rove always took care of us. There were times gone by where very powerful dragons would try to attack us. We realized there was safety in numbers, but there was a downside to that. The downside was that since we were in a more concentrated area and as a group, we were more of a target. There are some dragons that feed on others, but there is a law that we have here. Most of the dragons around the same size agree not to feed on dragons of the same flight or group. Instead, if we have to prey on other dragons, we will do so on tribal dragons, like people not from our tribe. Only the really large dragons stand to really benefit from eating other dragons. Most of us are comprised of very toxic material. We all have a common ancestor, and the one thing that most of us possess is the ability to either secrete or emit some form of toxic substance. This makes us not just venomous, but poisonous too. Now, there are some dragons that have built up an immunity to poison, and to our poison. They would rather feed on us. But for most species, it's really not worth it. We tend to feed on marine animals because they're very plentiful, but they can also contain special nutrients that are not readily available in other animals and dragons. The other reason that most of us don't feed on other dragons is because it's really not worth putting up the fight, to be honest. There's so many other animals that breed so much quicker and are easier to kill and hunt. Not to mention, many dragons are immune to fire. So I heard you have a visitor, said the bewildered beast, which caught me off guard. Oh, wow. Word does get around fast, isn't it? I just couldn't wait. Yeah. Well, I'm always inundated with the latest gossip. Usually I hear a plethora of different stories, but yours seems to be the one in everyone's mouth. Because I'm the first one to bring back a human, my friend. I waited for him to give me a stern look, but it never came. Instead, he chuckled in response. I landed on his back and looked at him warily. Why do you laugh? I figured this would happen someday, and it's something that you do. She must be really interesting for you to have brought her all the way back here. And how do you know it's a she? That's what I was told. That you ripped her away from her offspring, and then you watched it over as the other humans ate it. I flapped my wings in shock. Wait, what? That's not what happened. That's what I was told. No, this is why it's good to hear things from the dragon's mouth. I did not rip her away from her offspring. The male came in charging in like a bat out of hell, and I didn't want to leave her there in a war zone. Humans and dragons were dying, and I had to make a choice. I didn't think the offspring would make it, and I thought it'd be okay with its father. The real truth is that I didn't care what happened to the offspring. It was cute, but I don't really feel a connection or bond to anything, so if it died, it died. Just take me to her. Let me see the gorgeous specimen, Rove said, chuckling as he swam on. I flew towards the tower to meet the human. She looked a bit panicked, and maybe for good reason. She'd never seen all the dragons so frantic and active before. Things were made worse when she laid eyes on my large friend Rove. He towered over us, and even our tower, and the human fell back and was silenced in fear. Wow, she is beautiful. Have you been keeping her up here this whole time? I have to keep her away from the other dragons, don't I? Well, I'm here now. Rove whipped back his mighty head, thrusting his tusks into the air, and bellowed out a command. Anyone who harms this human will meet a horrible fate by me. All who hear, heed my word. And for those who didn't, make sure the word gets to them. You're safe now, little one. The mighty leader cooed to the human. She turned up her mouth in a weird gesture. See? She smiles. This meant she was happy. Why did I feel envious of Rove? I glared at him playfully. Show off. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Listen, I have to take one hell of a nap, so don't wake me up for about 5 months. Rove was not playing around because he did sleep for months. He got up every now and then just to shift his weight, but he deserved that long nap. During that time, the human became more comfortable with me. Even the other dragons started warming up to her. I caught her looking towards the horizon one day, and I had a thought. Most of our territory was surrounded by water, so she couldn't walk around the way she usually would where she came from. The crazy thought hit me. If I could carry her over the water, maybe she'd like that. She must have had the same thing in her mind, because later on that day she approached me with her hand outstretched. I growled instinctively, but I caught myself. Even if she did mean to attack me, what was she gonna do? She'd be no match for me, and she's not that stupid, especially knowing she's in the middle of a dragon's nest. I purred softly, waiting to see what she would do. Her hand stroked my face. It was a very odd feeling, but it also felt very nice. She put it behind my head, and my whole body went numb. I've never felt or been touched that way before. This was amazing. Many days that followed, she did that as well as various other things. She massaged my wings, something that I've never felt in all my life. I found myself flying vigorously just so I could feel sore enough for it to feel very good when she massaged it later that day. She stroked my tail and my back, and it made my scales stand up. I liked this human. Well, not like. She was useful to me. Eventually, she straddled my back and nestled her slender digits under my largest scales and made me feel like I wanted to be taken to the sky right there and then. But this is where things got weird. I didn't even realize at the time that my eyes had been closed until they shot open due to the cold air suddenly bathing my face. I was flying. Wow, I completely lost track of time. The last I remember, I was being massaged, lying on my back or my side, and now I was in the air. I sighed, trying to recount my time. I almost fell out of the sky when I heard a voice behind my ear. I dove immediately in total terror and did a barrel roll. Right away, an object fell from my body and from the water below. I gasped in shock until I recognized what it was. It was the human. How in the hell? I regained my composure and quickly realized that she was headed for the water at an alarming speed. I knew that if she had hit the water at that speed and from that height, she'd be hurt. I dove in an attempt to catch her. I flapped and then furled my wings to avoid the wind resistance. I was too late. The human screamed and then hit the surface of the choppy water with a splat before sinking in. My heart dropped. This was the first time I felt something like this wretched feeling. Time moved slowly as I made my way towards the surface of the water below. The human didn't surface for air. I held my breath, prepared to dive in after it. Her. If I had closed my eyes all the way, as I was prepared to do, I would not have seen them. The two pointy, streamlined heads emerged threateningly from out of the water and headed straight for me. I immediately altered my direction to avoid the jaws of a monstrous sea shocker, a two-headed water predator. The bite from any of these heads would be enough to paralyze me and drown me. I was curious as to what the fate of the human was. Every time I tried to get close to where she fell in, it met me by jumping out of the water and trying to slam down each of its jaws on me. The sea shocker was intimidating, but I hovered in the air trying to think of a plan. There's no way I was fighting that thing. If I dove in, it could swim a lot faster and with more expertise than I could. I needed help. I issued a cry to the closest dragon, and shortly thereafter it was answered. A romantic couple of natters came to my aid. "Distract it!" I commanded as I flew several yards away and dove into the water. When I was submerged, I stealthily swam towards where the commotion was. I looked around for as far as I could see, but I didn't see the human anywhere. I thought to myself that if she could not breathe underwater, she was probably dead by now. I made the decision to fly into the air before the sea shocker noticed me. The natter kids were toying with a large beast, each of them taking turns ejecting their quills into each of its faces. I was about to order the kids to give up until I saw an object in the distance floating out towards the rest of the sea. I flapped vigorously until I reached the item. It was a human, floating on her back. Her eyes were closed and her skin had already been burnt from the sun. What evolutionary advantage could humans possibly have for not having fur or scales? I wasted no time and grabbed her from out of the water. She hung limp like a severed tree branch. I brought her back to my tower and firmly nudged her stomach to try and get her to release any water she was holding. She failed to wake up. After a few moments, I was convinced she was dead until the Slitherwing came to meet me.
She's not dead. She's a survivor. She was able to position herself in time so she wouldn't drown. However, it does look as though she has a head injury, possibly from the impact of the water, or possibly from the impact of the sea shocker. Whatever it is, it seems to be contributing to her unconscious state.
What do we do then? I asked Slythe. There was actually concern in my tone. This seemed to shock her as well.
Keep her warm and just wait.
Thank you, Slythe.
Klaus.
Yeah?
Don't get too attached.
I would have scoffed at this, but lately it feels as though I have grown a little bit attached to the human. I mean, not truly attached, but enough to worry about the poor thing. Maybe some of this was due to my own selfishness of having a pet that could do things that I could never do for myself. I needed those massages. It also dawned on me that she had been on my back earlier when I was in flight. How did she manage to get up there and me not remembering us even taking off? For this reason alone, she had to make it out alive. I needed closure. I needed answers. It took days for her to wake up, but after she finally did, we took it slow and fed her only a little bit of food and a lot of water. Eventually, she seemed almost back to her regular self. She was massaging my scales and wings once more. She had a smile on her face once more, and she even began befriending the other dragons. After learning about what she did for me, dragons from all over started coming to see her so she could massage them as well. She made them feel things they'd never felt before, and helped some of the young ones unlock abilities and features they never even knew they had. They became her friends. She became my ally. I had started to enjoy her company even more than I did that of the dragons. One day I noticed that she wanted to climb up on my back again, but this time I was on alert. She did something to the back of my head that made me start to feel an intense sensation of heightened suggestibility. So that's how, you little trickster you. I fought it this time. I didn't like the idea of losing my inhibition. That time I was prepared. I didn't mind her wanting to fly with me. I thought it a fair trade, and for the first time that day, we were able to fly together. I'm so happy for this newfound friendship, and even though I still don't get attached to anything because this life is short and this life is pretty meaningless in the grand scheme of things, there was nothing wrong with enjoying the company of this very mysterious and interesting human. We went on to having many adventures there and after, but those are stories for another day.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. I know I'm kind of corny with the accents and stuff, but I try to make the characters all sound different. If you guys enjoyed POVs, I have a whole playlist of them on this channel, so you guys can check it out via the end card you can see right now, and turn on the bell for notifications for more videos, even though it only works like half the time. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Alteori. You ask, we answer.